All right, we have special guests with us. Do you know today is Corona Money Talk Day?
Is it?
Yes, it is. People are enjoying this segment. So I want to introduce you. There's the picture of him. You know, he's a New York Times best-selling author, the host of his own news show on MSNBC and CNBC. He was an award-winning reporter for Bloomberg. He's here for us now. It's Dylan Ratigan. Hi, Dylan. How are you?
I'm very well. I mean, listen, if you don't have a McDonald's, if you didn't have a McDonald's deal before that sizzling sales pitch, as soon as they hear that, the McDonald's money is going to be flowing your way. They're going to be begging you to take their money after the sales pitch you just offered.
You know, when you get up, when you're getting up in the middle of this depression, you have to get up early to find a job. Nothing like premium roast coffee from McDonald's to help you start your job hunt. All right, so here we go. We're going to get into it now. We're going to get into this political article, and the headline is Pelosi unveils a $3 trillion coronavirus relief plan amid squeeze from left and the right. So now let me just give you a brief overview. They've done 3.5 stimuluses now, which is actually 4, and in none of them did they give health care to people, and none of them did they give a UBI to people, and none of them did they have any plans to actually help people. Right? They have lots of plans to help oligarchs and huge corporations, but that's about it. So here's what's right? So that's right. So here's what's in this bill a little bit, right? So we've been screaming that none of the Democrats will call out their House leadership. Nancy Pelosi, the Democrats took over the House. The whole point of that is that we can have some power and control. And she's legislating as if she's Mitch McConnell, okay? Just so you know. Because they serve the same people. So here's what's inside. According to Politico, this is what's inside this bill, and then we're going to show you what's really inside the bill, okay? So according to Politico, It says Democrats released their sprawling package known as the HEROES Act on Tuesday afternoon. The legislation includes $875 billion cash for state and local governments, what Democratic leaders say is the centerpiece of the 5th coronavirus relief package. It also includes $20 billion each for tribal nations and for U.S. territories. The measure also includes provisions to support multi-employer pensions. Democrats also included a $75 billion to ramp up coronavirus testing and contact tracing in an effort that both parties say will be crucial to reopening state economies. The legislation also includes a slew of other liberal priorities left out of previous bills, including $75 billion for mortgage relief and $100 billion in assistance for renters, $25 billion for the U.S. Postal Service, and $3.6 billion to shore up elections. The bill, so my point is, now let me just stop there. Dylan, why did they have to wait till the 5th stimulus bill to get any of this stuff in there?
I think we all know why. The immediate response when we had our first unofficial Corona Money Talk, which I guess was in March, right after the initial market crash and all the things that were happening at that time, the initial immediate reflex was to rescue the financial institutions and the wealthiest people in America, which is what they did in the blink of an eye. Immediately, they rescued the stock market. They rescued the large banks. They bailed out Bill Ackman. They bailed out Ken Griffin, one of the richest hedge fund managers in the world. They bailed out Ray Dalio. All of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the country were bailed out in March as a reflex. And then since then, they have been incrementally using the bailout bills as opportunities to bail out slightly less rich people. And at the same time, they have really proven, I think the thing that really strikes me the most is that they've proven that even given a couple of months to look around and think about it, they really, 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 really don't want to give people health care.
Really?
Which, I mean, they've had a couple of months. I mean, they've had so much time to really understand how much health care has been lost from the depression level, unemployment levels that we now have. They understand the demand for health care is at an all-time high, which is partially caused by a global pandemic. If you haven't noticed, there's a bit of a pandemic going on, which creates some medical needs. And even in the face of the pandemic, and even in the face of depression-level unemployment, even and in the face of having a couple of months to contemplate the matter, the only thing they could offer in the way of health care was subsidies for private health insurance with COBRA.
Yeah. So yes. All right. So
I don't mean to change the subject on you, but when I look at what happened today, what I really saw when I looked through all the things that we're going to talk about was a country and a Democratic Party specifically that is completely and utterly and firmly and resolutely committed to making sure that it's really expensive and hard to get health care and that health insurance companies make lots and lots of money. And it is unlike any other country on earth. I mean, countries like Rwanda are working on a national health care system. Countries that we would theoretically condescend to for their overall quality of life, like India, have national health care systems. And yet this country, theoretically the richest in the world, theoretically the most powerful in the world, in the face of global or Great Depression level unemployment and a pandemic, still refuses to offer health care to the people that live in this country, and yet insists on making sure the people in this country pay double what any other group of people in the world pay for their health care in order to enrich the financial institutions that run the health insurance companies. That alone is a staggering indictment of the entire political class, led by, in this case, the Democrats, who claim the mantle of wanting to offer people help as a rhetorical flourish, not as something that they do, but as a marketing, as part of the Democratic Party's marketing. There's this sort of marketing around quote unquote caring about quote unquote people, and yet they don't do it, and still you see all of these people that want to support Democrats. It's amazing to me that anybody could possibly support Nancy Pelosi or the Democrats. It's easy to, like I said, it's easy to ridicule Donald Trump or the Republicans. It's inexplicable to me why anybody would support Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi. It is. I can't intellectually. I don't even know how to comprehend it.
Well, I just heard an environmentalist named Bill McKibben last night say that you have to vote for Joe Biden because we have an ability to influence him, but we don't have an ability to influence Trump. And guys who say stuff like that sound like chumps. Absolute chumps. As Joe Biden puts Larry Summers in his cabinet and gives you both fingers in your fucking face, they still think they want to play inside the system. What needs to happen, Dylan, is people need to get in the streets and shut down capitalism. I mean, workers can shut down capitalism at the snap of a finger. We've seen that. If everybody at Amazon stayed home tomorrow, this goddamn country would shut down. If everybody at UPS stayed home tomorrow, this country would shut down. I think the fucking post office should go on strike until they get the money they need, because this whole goddamn country would shut down. There are many worker factions in this country that could shut this country down overnight, and we're realizing that right now. How about grocery workers? Grocery workers could shut down this country overnight, and that's the kind of shit
They'd be closed tomorrow.
Tomorrow, the country would be going nuts. They'd have to bring in the National Guard to work at.
Look at how effective the protests in Hong Kong were, how massive and organized they were. Look at how effective the French are at doing exactly what you're describing. So it's not that it's not possible to do. There are two phenomenal examples of how effective protests can be in forcing structural political change, whether it's in France or in Hong Kong, are the two best recent examples. It's simple complacency and indifference and this desire to blame the opponent as opposed to doing anything. It is a stunning abdication of engagement that I think is even beyond something I would have ever imagined. I mean, but
Dylan,
for all the bravado of this country, sort of rah, we fight, blah, blah, it's a joke.
But Dylan, I get that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are complete robots of Wall Street, and they're evil, in fact. I get that.
They're evil agents of finance at the expense of the American people.
Evil agents of finance.
Literally at the cost of their health.
Literally, right?
Their lives.
But what I don't get is why there is absolutely no opposition to either of them in government. None. Ilhan Omar, he won't even stand up to them. AOC won't stand up to them. Bernie Sanders won't stand. No one will stand up for the American people in this moment. What's that?
Elizabeth Warren, nowhere to be found.
Nowhere to be found. No one will stand up for the American people right now. What they're doing, what Bernie Sanders is actually doing, is protecting the party. What AOC and Ilhan Omar are actually doing is protecting the party. They're not doing a goddamn thing to make sure people are taken care of, except writing letters to Nancy Pelosi begging. What they should be doing is organizing people to start shutting shit down, because we are in dire... This is not normal times. This is an existential threat right now. You think Donald Trump is an existential threat? This is an existential threat right now. And the progressive media is asleep. The progressive politicians are defending the party while screwing the people. And it's left to you and me to scream into the wind right now. That's it. We got nothing. And I can't go out and organize a strike because there's a fucking pandemic and I have underlying medical problems. And they know that shit.
It's a pretty good trick. It's a pretty good trick.
Pretty good trick. Let me
did you see that they did you do? I mean, you want to go back to the legislation? I feel like I took us a little bit off track.
Yeah. Let me just finish.
It's amazing on the things on that list.
Let me just finish this article and then we'll get to it. Okay. So
yeah.
The bill would also make $10 billion available to small businesses that haven't received funds from the Paycheck Protection Program. Before the measure was released, Pelosi had cautioned members on Tuesday that some of them would be disappointed by what was left out of the bill. Democrats acknowledge that their behemoth proposal, whose summary alone is 90 pages, is more of a talking point than legislation they expect to become law. So this shit isn't even going to get passed. And you know why it's not going to get passed? Because they gave away all their leverage. And they did that on purpose. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want this stuff to pass, which is why she gave away her leverage in the first place. And what was that leverage? That leverage was to hold the stimulus to the richest people in the country. And they didn't. They passed it unanimously. That's capitulation. That's 100% corrupt government. And that's why America is going to be Brazil in about 3 or 4 years. Let me just finish.
Nancy Pelosi is one of the richest people in the country. She's taking care of herself. You have to at least admire her
grift. Her grift. She's a grifter. Yes. Yeah. So inside this article, it says Representative Pramila Jayapal and Mark Pocan, leaders of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which is absolutely fucking worthless. They are worthless. Here's what they're doing. They're seeking to postpone any vote until next week so that members can fully digest the bill and potentially push for changes. Under no circumstances are we ready to vote on the bill this week. You're going to do whatever Nancy Pelosi tells you to do. So why are you pretending, Rashid? This is bullshit. You're going to do whatever Nancy Pelosi tells you to do, like a good little girl. And so is Mark Pocan. Like a good little boy, you're going to do whatever Nancy Pelosi tells you to do. I'll bet you $1 trillion you do that.
Or $3 trillion.
Jayapal said she was still reviewing the 1,815-page bill and wasn't prepared to support the measure yet. I'm reviewing it. She said she's focusing on 3 areas, Dylan. She's focusing on help for the unemployed to get them back to work, access to health care. She's using the bullshit terminology. She's using it. Access to health care and support for small business. This is them completely capitulating in a moment when they should be pushing for Medicare for all at the top of their lungs and thinking of ways to put pressure on the establishment to make that happen. They are completely capitulating. First, Ilhan Omar said we need to fully fund universal health care, and now Pramila Jayapal is saying that we need to have access to health care. Okay, there's more. Jayapal pushed hard for inclusion of the Paycheck Guarantee Program in the new bill. But Ways and Means Committee Chairman Richard Neal, a Democrat from Massachusetts, turned it down, saying the proposal is too costly and complicated. The JAPEL plan, which is backed by more than 60 House Democrats, has a price tag of more than $600 billion for 6 months. Neal instead supported an extension of the employee retention tax credit backed by Democratic moderates, which still costs more than $200 billion. So that's the entire, I'm giving you, that's the highlights from the Political article. It doesn't really tell you what's going on at all. But it does expose.
But for me, the headline, again, I don't mean to be so laser, but all you need to know is every single time, whether it's in the heat of the worst of the crisis with the market crashing or months to think about it, no UBI, no Medicare for all. They don't want it. They don't like it. They are against it. They don't want to support you in your home. They don't want to support the most vulnerable in the society. They don't want people to have mobility. They don't want people to have health care. Let anybody who ever again would ever deign to suggest that the Democratic Party either cares about working people or cares to give people health care should be punched in the face. This is a multi-month demonstration of conscious decision-making in the face of the largest budgets in the history of the world, trillion-dollar spending, and even with trillions of dollars available and money going to corporate lobbyists, I mean, you can run all the lists. Even in that situation, in the middle of a pandemic where we're at depression-level unemployment, even temporary UBI and Medicare for all is something they do not want. And that is a stunning demonstration of hostility to the point of being murderous to the people of this country that you would never imagine from any sane or rational government on this earth. Not that, I mean, that's a stupid thing because there's no such thing as a sane or rational government. So I kind of hesitated before I said that. But anybody who is politically engaged, who is of the delusional belief that anybody in American politics cares about them, should rapidly discard that belief. And any Democrat who believes that the Democrats are Barack Obama or Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi or any of these fools ever wanted to give them health care, ever cared about working people, ever felt their pain. This is a master class in the demonstration of not only the indifference to it, but the active prosecution of policies that are hostile to working people and the sick on behalf of financial institutions and the wealthy. That's who they work for. People should be in the streets. They should be full Yellow Jacket. They should be full Hong Kong. They should be shutting down the cities. But they're not.
Okay.
But there's lots of other countries that have complacently accepted an oligarchy and an underclass. India lives with it. Brazil lives with it. I mean, there are plenty of countries that have complacently drifted into this situation, and America seems to be one of them.
So we're just going to accept that we're going to have a two-tiered society, one mostly made up of the underclass, which will be the people who have no job and unemployment, people who are perennially poor, the generationally poor. It'll be then made up of workers who live paycheck to paycheck. And then maybe about 15% of the country will be able to, actually have a regular normal life that we would consider a normal life. And we will end up like Brazil, right? And that's where this is heading, right?
I mean, we're trending towards a Brazilian or an Indian social architecture with a two-tiered system where you have 90-odd% in the underclass, and then you just have, or Mexico. I mean, this is how most countries end up. Russia. I mean, it is really the standard model. Europe is the only exception. And America had a moment after World War II where it actually had a middle class. But that has been, Bill Clinton really started in on it, and then George Bush and Barack Obama really did a number on it. And then Donald Trump, to his credit, basically just said, listen, this is all bullshit. Like, why are we pretending? Like, the one thing that I think Donald Trump had going for him was there was no sheen of class, like the aspirationalism of Barack Obama's celebrity to make people feel good while they're getting destroyed by the overclass. It's why we talked about the Bidens and the Obamas are more dangerous to the people because they're like a narcotic for people's psychology, so they don't realize they're getting the frog is getting boiled.
That's a great way to put it. They're a narcotic for people's psychology, so they don't realize they're getting boiled. That's what the way I used to say it was that Barack Obama, or when a Democrat becomes president, half the left goes to sleep to all the horrible stuff that the government does, no matter who's the president. And that's exactly what happened with Barack Obama. And that's the case that I've been trying to make, and why I wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton, because it would have put the left to sleep once again. And you can't protest against a good Democrat, even as they're kicking 5.1 million people out of their houses in the middle of a recession, as they're making the banks bigger, as they're opening up the Arctic to drilling, as they're letting cops crack the heads of peaceful protesters at Occupy Wall Street, as they turn their backs on union teachers in Wisconsin, as their collective bargaining is taken away from them, as they say we're going to let it play out in DAPL, as they bail out private equity firms that inflate the price of first-time home buyers as they leave office. None of that gets protested or even opposed or even talked about when a Democrat is the president. Unfortunately, none of that got talked about when Donald Trump is president either, because the Democrats are so corrupt that they don't have the ability to talk about those things. Instead, they talk about an evidence-free red-baiting conspiracy theory aimed at the president and any of their political enemies, which has now been completely revealed to be unbelievable malfeasance on the part of the FBI and the CIA and the NSA and the Democratic Party and the media. And so that's the world we're living in. There almost seems no hope. Hey, this is the part where I tell you where our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then I would tell you to go join our premium, but nobody has a fucking job. So why don't you just enjoy the video?